Imagine standing knee-deep in freezing mud, the Belgian winter biting through your greatcoat like broken glass, with a canvas satchel pressed tight against your chest. Inside that satchel is a document that could end the war, a treaty, a ceasefire order, or a field dispatch that thousands of lives depend on. The rain is relentless, the mud swallows everything, and yet that document survives. Not by miracle, but by craft, by wax, canvas, and the quiet genius of men who understood that information, like fire, had to be protected at all costs. The wax-dipped case, Fieldcraft meets diplomacy. Long before modern waterproofing technology, soldiers and couriers in the Great War relied on a deceptively simple innovation, the waxed map case. Canvas was the starting material, tightly woven and already moderately resilient, but canvas alone failed in prolonged exposure to the driving sleet of the Western Front. Soldiers and quartermasters alike learned to melt beeswax or paraffin directly into the weave, working it in with heated tools or bare, calloused hands until the fabric became almost translucent with saturation. The result was a shell that repelled water with remarkable efficiency, keeping the ink on paper legible and the paper itself structurally intact. Trench shelter and the art of living underground. The same ingenuity that preserved documents preserved lives. Trench shelters, called dugouts, were not simply holes in the ground. They were engineered spaces, lined with timber revetting to prevent collapse, roofed with corrugated iron and layers of sandbags, then sealed overhead with tarred canvas using the same waterproofing logic as the map cases. The smell inside was a mixture of damp earth, wood smoke, and unwashed wool, oppressive and oddly intimate. Soldiers packed straw along the floor for insulation, understanding intuitively that dead air, trapped between natural fibres, was their best defence against hypothermia. Feeding the fight, scarcity, and resourcefulness. Sustenance in the trenches demanded the same adaptive mindset. Standard rations, bully beef, hard biscuits, and OXO cubes were often cold, damaged, or simply absent during sustained bombardment. Soldiers improvised cooking fires using small ventilated metal containers punched with holes, burning slow-combusting materials like compressed peat or wax-soaked rags to produce minimal smoke and avoid drawing enemy fire. Water was filtered through improvised cloth layers, boiled whenever possible, and stored in sealed tins treated internally with resin to prevent rust contamination, a direct parallel to the preservation logic of the waxed document case. Camouflage, cover, and reading the land. Movement above ground meant death without concealment. Soldiers studied their environment with the intensity of hunters, learning to read shadows, sight lines, and even the behavior of birds disturbed by enemy movement. Burlap was unraveled and rewoven into netting strung across observation posts, threaded with local vegetation that was, regularly replaced as it dried and lost its natural color. Faces and hands were darkened with mud or charcoal. These were not tricks learned in training manuals. They were refined through brutal trial and error, passed from veteran to recruit in whispered instruction between shifts. Hygiene, morale, and the will to endure. Survival was never purely physical. Maintaining personal hygiene in a trench environment bordered on the impossible, yet soldiers understood instinctively that filth accelerated illness, and illness destroyed unit cohesion. Makeshift washing stations used repurposed ammunition tins. Clothing was deloused over open flames with practiced efficiency. Letters from home were folded and refolded until the paper nearly dissolved. Read not for information, but for the sensation of connection to a world beyond the wire. What the wax teaches us today. The waxed map case is a masterclass in preparedness philosophy. Protect what matters most with what you have available. In today's world of bushcraft and modern survivalism, the principles have not changed. Waxed canvas remains among the most reliable field materials available. Layered waterproofing, redundant sealing, and the discipline to maintain gear before crisis strikes are lessons the trenches taught in blood. Your Fieldcraft awaits. If this episode fired something in you, that instinct for preparedness, that respect for hard-won wisdom, then this channel was made for you. Subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles so you never miss an episode, and share this video with the history lovers, bushcrafters, and self-reliance seekers in your life. The men of 1918 had no choice but to be resourceful. We have the privilege of choosing to be. Stay sharp, stay prepared. See you in the field.